You know that feeling when you just have to do something right now? Well, today we're diving into a powerful theological concept that's all about that feeling, gospel urgency. We're going to break down what it is, why its believers think the stakes are so incredibly high, and what it demands of them. Let's get right into it. So, here's how we're going to tackle this. First, we'll look at the core idea, this concept of a closing window. Then, we'll get into the problem that makes it so urgent, the specific job given to believers, the massive cost of doing nothing, and finally, the ultimate motivation behind this whole way of thinking. And this right here, this is the verse that really kicks the whole thing off. It's from the Gospel of John, and it draws a really stark line in the sand. There's a time for work, and then there's the night, a time when work just isn't possible anymore. That idea of a hard deadline is the engine for this entire argument. So let's flip this around for a second and make it personal. Imagine your window of opportunity for something huge was slamming shut. That's the feeling the source wants us to have. This isn't just some abstract idea. It's meant to feel like a ticking clock on a mission that's yours and yours alone. Okay, so let's get into our first big idea, the closing window. This is the central metaphor, the whole concept of a limited time only opportunity that everything else is really built on. So what are we actually talking about when we say gospel urgency? Well, according to the source material, it's the belief that there's a very specific, limited, and critical time frame to share the Christian message. And here's the kicker. Once that time is up, the opportunity is gone for good. And this is where that metaphor really comes to life. Day is now. It's the open door, the chance to act. But night, well, that's what's coming. A time when that door is locked and bolted. The really crucial thing to understand here is that from this viewpoint, the night isn't just a possibility, it's an absolute certainty. Okay, so we've got a ticking clock, but what's at stake? Why does it matter so much? That brings us to our second section, a world without hope. See, to really get the urgency, you first have to understand the problem they're trying to solve. And this is where we see just how high the price of inaction is supposed to be. Right, so why the rush? What's the big deal? The answer, according to the text, goes way beyond just a deadline. It's all about what happens to the people who are on the other side of that door when it finally slams shut. Just look at this. The source material paints a picture of two totally separate, completely opposite realities. You've got light, liberty, and hope on one side, and on the other, darkness, hopeless, and in despair. The text makes it very clear there is absolutely no middle ground. And they don't mince words. The source uses this specific, kind of chilling term, the gloomy state. It says a person in this state is living without God, is hopeless, is in despair, and is ultimately, well, doomed to destruction. It's a picture of total and complete hopelessness. All right, so if that's the problem and it's pretty grim, what's the solution? That brings us to section 3, a mandate to act. This is where the whole thing pivots. The focus shifts from the crisis to the individual, and the believer is cast as the one who has to stage the rescue. And the mandate starts with something incredibly direct. The text doesn't say, hey, go bring a flashlight into the darkness. It says, you are their light. It's not about carrying a tool. It's about being the solution yourself. And it just keeps building from there. It's not just that you are the light. The source says you are also the literal embodiment of hope for those who have none. This isn't a job you can pass off to someone else. It's framed as a direct, personal responsibility. And this last one, this is the real kicker. The believer is presented as the point of contact. Just think about that for a second. Not just a delivery person for a message, but the actual connection, the bridge between someone lost in despair and what the text calls the glorious liberty of the sons of God. So, the mandate is pretty clear. But what happens if someone just doesn't do it? That leads us straight into section 4, the cost of delay. This is where the source lays out the pretty serious consequences of just sitting back and being complacent. And the source couldn't be more blunt about it. It says delay can mean eternal loss. And get this, it's not for someone who needed to hear it from you, eventually. It's for someone who needed to hear it from you today. That ticking clock we talked about, it just got a whole lot louder. So how are you supposed to answer this call? Well, the text basically lays out a 4-step game plan for your mindset. First, you have to consciously reject complacency. Then, you have to act with boldness. You train yourself to seize every single moment. And all of this is supposed to be done while being led by the Spirit. And all of this brings us to our final section, bringing in the harvest. This is the ultimate why behind it all. It's the core motivation that's meant to turn this call to action from just another duty into what the source describes as a compelling, undeniable necessity. You see this phrase right here? It's from the Apostle Paul, and it really changes everything. Sharing the gospel is no longer framed as a good idea or an optional side quest. The source presents it as a necessity, something that is absolutely required of every single believer.
And this quote, this is what really drives that point home. But notice the subtle shift here. This isn't about what happens to the person who doesn't hear the message. This is about the consequence for the believer who doesn't preach it. Woe unto us, it says. That implies a personal, negative outcome for failing to do your part. And the whole argument wraps up with this one final powerful image. The world isn't seen as some hostile territory you have to conquer. No, it's pictured as a field that's already ready and right for harvest. The job isn't to make things grow. It's just to go out and gather what's already waiting. So after walking through this entire argument, we're left with this one massive question. If you truly believe that time is running out, that the stakes are literally eternal, and that you are the designated point of contact, then from this perspective, what is the real weight of a single moment?